What is going on, Guardians? Dorvrich here, and in this video I'll be doing a solo flawless run of the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon as Sunbreaker Titan. This run will be with full walkthrough commentary, and it will show what I believe to be the safest and most consistent way to get this solo flawless run accomplished. As for the build, I'm on a pretty standard Bonk Titan, so for those unfamiliar, that is a Solar Titan using the Throwing Hammer with Roaring Flames, Sol Invictus, and Syntheseps. You can find a dim link to the exact setup that I'm using in the description below, but other than the pieces that I just specifically mentioned, the setup is very flexible and you can pretty much customize it to your personal liking. There are two main reasons that I've chosen to go with Bonk Titan for this. One is that the amount of single target deletion the setup is capable of is very useful with the amount of high health priority targets that we run into. We can delete them in just one or two hammers. And the other reason is that this setup has practically unlimited healing, making it very difficult to die, and for a solo flawless run, being hard to kill is good for obvious reasons. So here the encounter will start as soon as we kill these two knights. So an ogre is going to spawn here, we'll 2-tap him with the Xenophage, and he'll drop a trail of green goop, and we'll need to follow that. It's going to take us around to a few different sort of spawn nodes that are marked by a hive symbol. We will need to take note of exactly what this symbol looks like because we're going to need it in a bit. So the wizards are the mechanically significant enemies here. Once we kill those, another trail of green goop will appear and we'll need to follow that to the next spot. So it goes down here. And the next spawn should spawn in just a moment. We're going to want to move somewhat quickly because our Roaring Flame stacks are on a timer, and as long as they're stacked up, we can one-shot anything we want to with the hammer. And this build has a very good time playing aggressively because the more aggressively you play, the more healing sunspots you leave around, and the safer you ultimately are. Apologies if I sound a little bit dead, by the way. I spent the last several hours practicing the encounters in this dungeon in preparation for this solo flawless run. So this is going to be the Lucent Hive spawn, which means we're at the end of this sequence. In a moment we're going to see a bluish glow where the Lucent Hive is about to appear. So we just bonk it with the hammer 3 times, crush the ghost, and we will get a timed buff, Vestige of Light, for 1 minute and 20 seconds. We have the duration of that buff timer to bring the buff back to the starting point, kill a wizard, acquire deep sight from where we killed the wizard, and then use that deep sight to place this buff into the correct statue. The correct statue being the one that matches the symbol that we were just following. I would advise popping super in the middle, because there's not really a better time to use it, and it does make us very tanky for when we're walking around looking for a symbol. Right, here it is, so we just interact here, and that's 1 out of 4 statues done. We unfortunately do have to wait out the remainder of the deep sight timer before the next ogre will spawn to begin the next sequence. I suppose that gives us some time to clean up a few of these ads. It's the same as before, 2 taps with the Xenophage, and follow the green trail. Right, that is our next symbol. We'll need to remember what that looks like for the statues. We have Roaring Flame stacked up, so now we can just focus the wizards. And it looks like it goes across this gap here. As long as we have stacks, we can just one-shot the wizards. And since they are the enemies that hurt the most by far, that will leave us pretty safe. Our healing will take care of the rest. Heavy healing plus heavy damage resist is always a very potent combo. It looks like our next one is going to be inside this structure over here. Yep, there's the symbol. Things should spawn in just a moment. This is going to be the second Hive Light Bearer spawn, so we'll want to be ready and take care of that as quickly as we can. This is why I elect to run Healing Grenade on my Bonk Titan for moments like that. 3 hammers, crush the ghost, and we're off. With Hive Light Bearers, if you can more or less spawn kill them before they pop their super, they're not very threatening at all. But if you leave them alive long enough for them to actually start doing their various shenanigans, they can get very dangerous very quickly. With this build in particular and the amount of healing we have, we're free to just walk up to them and bonk them with a hammer a few times. We don't really have to worry about chip damage from other stuff. Pop the super, and find the next statue. I thought it was this one, was it? Oh wait, no, it was this one. So now we just kill stuff until the next ogre spawns again. Something I really appreciate about this dungeon over the more recent ones that we've gotten is that it doesn't begin with a long traversal section, it gets right into the action. When you think about Spire of the Watcher, Duality, and Grasp of Avarice, they all start with these long sort of jumping / puzzle or find the way sections. And while that's really cool for setting the atmosphere the first time you play through the dungeon, when you're farming, which is for most people, I want to say at least 95% of the time they play that dungeon, it just ends up feeling like a pointless chore before you get into the real part of the dungeon where you can kill enemies and get loot. We've still got our stacks, so we can just bonk these wizards and move on. So this hole in the ground in this next section is not an actual hole. You can walk on top of it just fine. You're not going to fall into it. It's a little bit deceptive. Alright, Goop is pointing this way. And that should take us to our next Hive Light Bearer spawn. Look for the blue glow. There it is, and get ready to kill. Bonk, bonk, and bonk. I have a very poor sense of direction, so I'm not sure exactly where the ritual statues are from here, but it should be roughly this way. I don't see them. Oh, I know where we are now. Should be... Yep, here they are. As long as we keep moving, they give us more than enough time for this. Alright, here it is. That's 3 statues down and just 1 to go. We just clear out some of these ads while waiting for the deep sight to count down. It sounds like it's about to end, but I can't see it. I hear the ogre. Oh, there's the eye blast. There it is. That's why it's very important to always play with sound on, especially when you're going for a challenge run. Sound gives you so much information, especially in the final boss room, which I'll cover in more detail once we get there. But essentially that boss teleports around a lot and has some very dangerous moves it can use. And if you're caught off guard by one of those, your run can go from amazing to over in about half a second. We have plenty of time on our Roaring Flame stacks, so we can just go straight for the wizards. Whoops, missed our hammer there. At least it didn't go off the map. This is why I highly recommend using 1-2 finisher on the class item. You'll notice that we have 3 stacks of armor charge sitting around. That is specifically for 1-2 finisher, so that if we mess up and throw a hammer off the map or completely out of reach, all we have to do is finisher an enemy and it will give us most of the hammer back. Sol Invictus can usually take care of the rest of the energy before the situation becomes bad. Crush the ghost, and back to the statues. But here's the wizard, so we'll go up to her, pop super, and finish the encounter. Alright, as soon as we dunk this, enemies will despawn and we'll get our loot. Now this next section is a very refreshing sort of jumping puzzle because it incorporates underwater movement, and also this is the first dungeon we've had since they made fall damage non-lethal, and since this jumping puzzle is basically one huge descent, we can go full send. Well, if you have faith in Bungie's physics behaving the way it should, you can go full send. Theoretically, you shouldn't die from falling. Personally, I've been playing this game for far too long to just erase the muscle memory of breaking my fall like that. Because fall damage is no longer lethal, there's not much else to say about this part of the jumping puzzle other than this is the way you have to go. And when you think you've gone down enough, go down some more because we are going into the depths of the ocean and then even deeper. A bunch of enemies are going to spawn in this room. They're not very threatening, but just be aware. And we will have to kill all of these to advance to the next area. And down we go. These rotating platforms look important, but they're not. They do nothing. Now we get to dive into the water. It would be so cool if this game had a diving animation for when we jumped into the water like that. So while we're underwater, as you can see on the left, we have this pressure resistance gauge that will continuously deplete. And as we pass through these bubbles, I guess they're technically methane bubbles, fart bubbles, right? As we pass through these fart bubbles, they will refill the pressure resistance gauge to full with each one we pass through. When the gauge hits 0, we do not immediately die. Instead, that overshield that you see over our health bar will tick down about once every second. And if that ticks down to the bottom, that's what kills us. It takes 8 ticks to go from full to the bottom. So here we're going to go up for a change. We go up just to go even further down. when I did my initial blind solo learning run for this. I put in the Subnautica soundtrack for this part. I thought it fit pretty well. So we don't actually have to pass through all of these bubbles on the way down. It gives us a lot of leeway with the timing. So even though this fan doesn't look like a working fan, judging by the last one, we can go up this one as well. And just like with the last one, we go up to go even further down. So at this point, as we jump off this drop-off, we're going to want to angle to the left. Even though the obvious path is to go all the way down, if we go to the left here, we can bypass most of the enemies in this room. So we'll just jump along the left side here and float over everything. Oh, whoops. And I just fell down while trying to demonstrate how to skip this section. Perfect. That is what our healing grenade is for. And with these guys, we can just jump past them. They're not going to do much to us. Okay, so on the other side of this wall, there will be quite a few enemies waiting for us, so be ready for that. Popping super is a good option here. There's not really anything else that we're going to use our super for between now and the first boss encounter. So we might as well just clear out the room extra safely. In a solo flawless run, you'll take every bit of safety you can get. Within reason, of course. I'm not about to sit in that hallway and wait 15 minutes for my super to come back. So we don't actually have to kill any of this stuff. I'm just going to kill a few enemies to get the buffs rolling to make it safer to run through. These thralls up here will just kill themselves in the sunspot, like thralls have been doing ever since the Thrallway days. And we are almost to the hive ship that contains the first boss encounter. So for this next jump off of this platform, pause for a second before taking it. That platform is pretty finicky, and I've found that if I'm moving at full speed, it'll sometimes just eat my jump because my feet were an inch above the ground. Whoops, that's not how a water elevator is supposed to work. That's better. So I've only done this traversal sequence a couple times, so forgive me if I end up spinning around a little bit more than normal. Alright, this next section is going to be where our scout rifle finally starts to come in. There's going to be a shrieker above us. It's not going to aggro right away. Once we jump up a little more and get closer, it'll open up. So we're going to jump over here and then immediately duck in here to the left. There'll be a couple acolytes that we can just make short work of with our bonk. Now if the shrieker doesn't open up here, which it looks like it doesn't want to, we can tuck inside here and move this way, and that will move within the shrieker's aggro range. As the shrieker opens up, that will also trigger that thrall spawn, and we can just sit here and thrall away them to death. Come on, keep on coming. And then once the thralls have all finished running into fire one by one, we can take our scout rifle and take out this shrieker. So this bridge ahead of us will spawn acolytes momentarily. We can just healing grenades so that they have no chance at killing us as we jump up, and then start bonking. Again, we don't have to kill any of this, so we're just going to kill enough to get it out of our way. This build excels at ignoring enemies and violently disposing of the ones that do get in our way. So coming down into this sewer looking thing, do not take that tunnel directly across. Just drop all the way down, move 2 to the right, and then go through this one. It'll stop us right next to a bridge. Then we can just jump the rest of the way. If you take that first pipe, it's going to dump you straight into the abyss. Once we reach the top of here, we're going to drop down, and this will take us to the first boss encounter. And there's the boss. As you can see, he can come underwater, and while we're underwater with him, all he does is slowly walk at us and try to melee us. Whenever he hits us, it takes away half of our pressure resistance. The rally flag is very difficult to see here. The circle usually clips into the ground. For damage on this boss, we'll be using the tractor cannon debuff with our bonk hammer. Normally, this kind of a DPS setup takes a lot of sort of micromanagement of buffs and moving back and forth between enemies. But since this encounter has so many small enemies that are very aggressive and will kind of swarm us, they will do most of the heavy lifting for us. So we want to go 1, 2, 3 stacks of Roaring Flames, then immediately come up here and bonk the Yellow Bar Knight. Then go up to the middle and bonk the Yellow Bar Knight. And to the left, bonk the Yellow Bar Knight. Once all 3 knights are dead, an ogre will spawn here. We'll bonk him, and that will cause a deep sight orb to spawn near where we started the encounter. We interact with this, and there will be a total of 3 symbols that will show up above the doors. I'm just going to type my own code for them in the chat. And now we will need to simultaneously kite the boss around down here, while gathering those same symbols that we saw above the door. While underwater, every time we jump it gives us a little push forward. So if we bunny hop, it'll make it a lot easier to stay out of the boss's melee range. And just as I say that, we get hit. But it doesn't matter because we still have 8 seconds to get to this bubble. Overall, this underwater section of the fight is actually very forgiving. The only way you really die here is if you panic and run away from a bubble after you get hit. Right, here's the last one. The runes successfully align with the crackle. That means we're good to go up and do the next step to get to DPS. So because we successfully gathered all 3 of the glyphs downstairs, 3 light bearer wizards will spawn. So we'll do what we do to most enemies, we bonk them. As soon as we squish the ghost, we'll get a buff, Vestige of Light, for 1 minute and 20 seconds. We can either dunk that now, or we can kill the other wizards and stack up the buffs and dunk them all in one go. I'm going to elect to do it that way. Alright, now we have the 3 stack, so we come up here and dunk it into a statue. When you come up here to dunk, make sure you occasionally bonk something just to keep our buffs up, because we want our buffs to be full, or as close to full as we can get them when the actual damage starts. So here's the last dunk, so pull out the tractor cannon as you come down, jump past the boss, turn around, debuff shot, bonk this guy twice to spawn a puddle that will allow us to damage the shield, and super the boss. So the shield's broken, so now we're good to move closer and start tractor bonking. As we're tractor bonking, we'll need to keep an eye on our Roaring Flames debuff. We don't want that to run out. So when it gets low, we just turn around and bonk a small enemy to refresh, and back to the tractor bonking. Looks like damage is over. Yep, damage is over. Now we just repeat that. Remember to reload the tractor cannon. There's nothing more awkward than starting a DPS phase and finding that your tractor cannon has to be reloaded first thing. This is exactly the same as the previous phase. Bonk the knights, bonk the ogre, get the deep sight, take note of the symbols, dive, pick up the symbols, come back up, kill wizards, dunk the buffs, do DPS. Boss is to that side, so it looks like we're going left. We might take a hit here, but it's alright because we're right next to a bubble. Right, we just took a hit, but that's perfectly fine. We just have to locate and get to a bubble. And there we go, good as new. Right, that's all 3 symbols, but we are about to run out of pressure, which is fine, there are bubbles everywhere. And back upstairs. First thing, we want to get a bonk off to start healing. Get 2 more stacks of Roaring Flames, and go to town with the wizards. One more. Missed the hammer. At least it didn't go into the water. If you do mess up and throw a hammer into the water, it actually seems to despawn as soon as it hits the water, so don't bother chasing it. Either finish your enemy to get a new one, or if that's not feasible, just jump into the water and wait. The only thing that can remotely threaten you down there is the boss, and all he does is slowly walk after you. But same deal as before, tractor cannon. Do a debuff as we fly by him. Kill this guy, super, break the shield. and Tractor Bonk. That's not as much damage. Okay, there we go. Syntheseps must not have been on. Alright, 2 phases, a little more than half his health is gone. That's pretty good pace. So although for a solo flawless, you'll hear me say a lot of the time in my other solo flawless videos that it doesn't matter how fast you do it. All that matters is that you complete. It doesn't matter if you take 1 phase or 10 phases. You still get the same emblem, you still get the same triumph. But this dungeon is actually a little bit of an exception. The bosses in this dungeon have so much health that it makes Spire of the Watcher look tame. I don't know what they were thinking, not only giving the bosses over 10 million health, but also giving them a shield mechanic where essentially the less DPS you have or the fewer people you have, the more damage in total you have to put out to kill the boss, because at the beginning of every phase you have to break another shield. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it does feel strange how they say that these dungeons are designed to be soloed or soloable, and they put in a mechanic that punishes being solo beyond what normally comes with having to essentially pull triple weight by yourself. They're forcing players to pull more than triple weight for being solo in this dungeon. And that's Mist Hammer. It's okay, we can run after it. If you're playing Hammer Titan, and you're not acting like you care about your hammer more than yourself, you're not doing it right. Your hammer is not only the source of your damage, but it's also the source of the bulk of your survivability, because it makes those sunspots and it gives you those burst heals. If you lose your hammer on the ground and it explodes, you're probably going to explode not too long after. There it is. That is all 3 stacks. Time to dunk. Jump, debuff, bonk, bonk, super. If you're practicing this encounter for the solo flawless, it's very important to have that flow in your muscle memory. It helps out the damage a lot when you can land a full super into a tractor cannon debuff. Refresh Roaring Flames, and back to bonking. Alright, looks like one more phase will do it really easily. Boss is on the left, we go right. There's the last one. Now we just have to make it out of here safely, and we won't have to worry about the underwater boss anymore. Long to get the healing and the buffs going. Kill the wizards. Right, that's all 3 buffs, so now we dunk and then finish this. Pull out the tractor, jump, debuff, kill, super. Alright, super is almost done. Time to move in and tractor bonk. I do not have a bonk. What happened to it? Okay, this isn't good, let me think. Okay, we have 1-2 finisher. So that's fine. We can go over here, get something in finisher range, and get the hammer back. We lost a lot of the DPS phase, but we might still be able to kill here. No, I only have 1 stack of roaring flames. That's not enough damage. Oh well, 1 more phase. In a way, I actually sometimes like showing little mess-ups like that in a solo flawless run, because it just shows the reliability of the strategy that we're using. It doesn't require anywhere near perfect execution to get a solo flawless run using these strategies, these setups. There's a lot of room to mess up. Speaking of messing up, that's better. Here's the last one right here. And now we finish the fight for real this time. Might actually die to just the super damage here. No, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. When he's dead, always remember to crush the ghost. Everything else should despawn momentarily. Well, this maximum seasonal currency thing is a little bit annoying. Whoops. I guess I don't technically have to go up for the loot. It'll go to Postmaster. Because this is actually the way forward. So the traversal section between the first boss and the final boss is actually very short. But it makes up for it by having a lot of enemies in the large main room between here and there. But with the way that the room is structured, we can actually pretty easily run past everything. We'll be very careful in this room. There's a pack of cursed thrall around the corner ahead of us. Shoot those from a distance. Okay, now for this room, you have two options. You can either sit in the back with your long-range weapon and plank, or you can just run through. If you do choose to run through like I'm doing, make sure that you keep healing up by using your bonk against enemies when you get a chance. Like right here, now we have healing, we can go. Bonk one of these enemies in the next group, now we have healing, we can go. It's okay that we missed a couple bonks, we still have healing. The important thing is to keep moving, and if we stop moving in front of a Shrieker, we die. And that's it. Now we drop down this hole to the final boss. So for the final boss, we're going to use a specialized DPS loadout. So in the loadouts menu here, on the left I have the general purpose getting 2 DPS, and on the right I have the actual DPS loadout. For actual DPS, we're going to be using Ecthar with Xenophage to keep it auto-reloading so that we don't have that long downtime during DPS where we have to reload a machine gun. We also have triple solar surges on the Ecthar setup, so when we hot swap that right before DPS, it'll convert it into an almost 25% buff to our Xenophage. For other weapons, I'm running double fusions, so a Cartesian coordinate in the energy slot, with Vorpal for boss damage, and in the kinetic slot, a chill clip deliverance. The chill clip is nice with the hammer, but mostly I just have it because I wanted double fusions, and deliverance was one of the good rolls that I had laying around. And with that, we should be good to begin. So as soon as we start the encounter, we'll want to make our way to this back corner over here. 3 acolytes are going to spawn, so we can use those 3 to activate our syntheseps and get a hammer kill to kick off our buffs. And immediately come and shoot these moths. The moths are deadly if they get close to us. Doesn't matter how much healing we have, they will kill us. And now we need to come over here and hit the steep site thing to begin the mechanic. So this will reveal a triangle to us that connects 3 of the points by Oryx's various body parts. We need to pick one first, one that is not his chest cannot be first. And while standing in this green circle that pops up, we need to kill not this knight, but an actual proper yellow bar knight. It has a name that I don't remember at the moment. Sometimes the Yellow Bar Knight can take a while to aggro. He's supposed to just walk at you. There he is. Now we have that text prompt saying where he died. So now we go over here and look through the ring at the symbol. When it's centered, we can move away. And that reveals one symbol that we're going to need for later. Always prioritize killing moths. There's not a lot that can kill us in this encounter, but the swarm of moths is definitely one of the things that can. So here's where another one of the nodes of the triangle was. I didn't feel like waiting for him to come over here, so I'm just going to Xenophage. And look through the ring. Now we have to do that one more time. That'll complete a triangle of symbols. I don't see the guy, so I'm just going to hide in here until he shows up. There he is. So now we go and look through the ring, and that will spawn in the final symbol. So now that we have the 3 symbols, the next step to starting damage, of which there are many, is to go into one of the water rooms, or through one of the water hallways to one of the side rooms. There are 3 water hallways, each with 2 entrances. And then in the middle of the hallway is a sort of side exit leading to the proper side rooms. If we move through here quickly enough, we can maintain Roaring Flames times 3. Yep, there it is. Now we have big damage ready for this Lightbearer. So before we completely kill the Lightbearer by switching its ghost, we want to take note of the symbol. Now that gave us Vestige of an Acolyte, which we will need to take back to the main room and dunk it under the same symbol that was in the Acolyte's room. So in this case it was the asterisk looking one. So we need to use Deep Sight to reveal the actual orb that we interact with here. Interact with that, and then it will say that I'm not even going to try to pronounce the boss's name. Control over the ritual wanes. Now we're going to repeat that again, but in a different room. This one is going to have a knight in it, and the one that we haven't been in yet will have a wizard. Roaring Flames ran out, so before we take on the knight, we'll need to stack on these acolytes down here. He's going to hit us, but we have healing, so it's fine. And crush. Every single time you go to crush a ghost, before you actually hit the button, remind yourself that you need to know the symbol, and if you haven't looked at the symbol yet, look at it before you crush the ghost. Because as soon as you crush the ghost, that symbol disappears. You don't want to be in a situation where the end of your Soul of Flawless run is coming down to a coin flip. If you dunk the wrong symbol, or if you let the timer on your Vestige buff run out, it will kill you. Now that's imbued, then we're going to go to the wizard's room last. The reason that I always like to leave the wizard room for last is because it's a very short travel distance between one water door and the other, so it's easy to keep the Roaring Flame stacks up. We're going to want to jump into the water first, then hot swap to our DPS loadout. And then we should be able to get back out and kill another thing with a hammer to refresh Roaring Flames. That is a miss. With the strategy that we're using to deal damage, we do want Roaring Flames ×3 by the time we hit the last imbuement. So we hit this, immediately press super, spam super on the boss to break the shield. The boss is going to teleport towards us in a moment. At which time we will unload on it with our Cartesian because it's close. And then when stuff starts to get a little bit hot, we'll start backing away and sort of kiting around the room shooting Xenophage. And thanks to Actimore Rig, it will constantly reload itself so we never have downtime to reload the machine gun. Periodically refresh Radiant with the Throwing Hammer and also our healing. And that is one DPS phase. It doesn't look like much, but when you realize that this boss has almost 13 million HP, even a small portion of the bar missing is good. And now we rinse and repeat. But first we have to find a safe spot to swap our loadout back to the neutral game one. Okay, we don't want to kill him quite yet. We'll hit the deep sight and it will reveal another triangle between 3 random points, or rather, more accurately, 2 random points plus the heart. So the thing about killing this Yellow Bar Knight, all that matters is that we are standing in the circle when the Knight dies. It does not matter where the Knight is standing. If we are standing in the circle, it will spawn the ring and the symbol. Then we stand in the other circle, kill him from there, and make our way over to the other spot to look through the ring at the symbol. And while we're doing all this, we want to always stay hyper vigilant for the boss spawning a pack of moths. We have a lot of healing, but something we can't heal through is several moths exploding on our face at the same time. So now this is going to be the third and final symbol. Once we've manifested this, we're good to go and start gathering the buffs. Our Roaring Flames is going to run out by the time we get through the water wall, so we'll need to bonk 3 small enemies before we go and take on the Lightbearer. Remember, look at the symbol first, then crush the ghost. It's always good to keep bonking things because it keeps us healthy for the boss's projectile spam. that's dunked, we'll go and take on the knight. So it's unlikely that we're going to keep our stacks of Roaring Flames when we get out of the water wall, but there are always plenty of fresh adds in the Lightbearer rooms to stack up before we actually get to them. We'll try to get to him before he manages to pop super. So if we're lucky and there's an enemy right outside this water wall, we should be able to maintain our stacks. I think we got it. It's hard to tell because I believe Soul Invictus takes priority. Oh, we did. Nice. We kept 3 stacks of Roaring Flames. So now we hit the deep sight and we dunk the Vestige. Now the wizard, again, the wizard has a very short path, so it's good to save it for last so that we can both hot swap on the way and still maintain our Roaring Flame stacks. Grab a reset on Roaring Flames before we go, if I can land my hammers. Okay, at this point, it's probably not worth it. I'm just gonna get the stacks back on the outside, because we are on a timer with the Vestige, and I would rather not risk the timer running out to 0 and dying. Last dunk is right under the boss, which is exactly what we want to see. It makes it easy to land every tick of damage from our Hammer of Soul. And since he's close, we'll do Cartesian first, once we grab Radiant. And switch to Xenophage for more safety. We're out of Xenophage, so back to the Cartesian. And there's nothing really on us, so we should be good to swap our loadout here. So at this point, this fight is just going to be the same thing over and over that we just did, until we finally manage to eat through over 12 million HP. So at this point, I'm going to speed up the video until the final damage phase, and I will resume the commentary there too. Alright, here we are about to start the final damage phase. So imbue, pop super, start throwing the hammers, and in a moment he should teleport in front of us. Here he is. Throw the rest of the hammers. Air super's out, so grab Radiant. Okay, I like to grab it off the boss, it's fine. Some Cartesian shots. Switch to Xenophage and unload. And don't forget to crush the ghost. And she is dead. That was a solo flawless run of the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon as Sunbreaker Titan. Drop a like if you found this video helpful or entertaining, subscribe if you want to see more Destiny 2 content, and feel free to ask any questions you might have in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one, Guardians.